Mark 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
This is RFD Today, a daily look at the key topics impacting rural Illinois. If you live in Illinois, we examine the issues impacting you, your income, and your community. Here's your host for today's program, DeLaw Schonke.
Hey, good Monday to you, Illinois. Thanks for joining us for this adventure in broadcasting on the 6th of May. Hopefully you had a delightful weekend. Weather-wise, I know for most it was fantastic, but just how much precip is in the forecast for these next few days. In fact, Rita Frazier will be along later. She talked with several folks about river issues, water issues, and what's being done. I mean, just saying we got to move grain, just the kind of work that's going to take place to move things and people and livestock at a time when you'd rather be planting. A whole lot going into that. Also, she'll visit with State Director of Agriculture John Sullivan. In just a couple of minutes, we'll talk to Mark Gebhard's Illinois Farm Bureau about a number of federal and mostly state issues, and Dale Dirkholz. Well, we'll have plenty to talk about as well on a Monday. First, though, we'll hear from this week's Farm Week Crop Watcher. This week's Farm Week Crop Watcher in northern Illinois is Marshall Newhouse. So, how much rain have you had of late, and also how much snow have you had of late? I'm sure that's been part of the problem for farmers in the area.
Boy, if you want to look over the last 8 days, we've had a total of 9 to 10 inches of snow. We've had last week an additional 2 inches of rain. So, yeah, we're right at 3 inches for the week. We're hoping to get enough sunny weather where we might be able to get going here sometime this week. But last night we ended up with another 0.4 of an inch of rain in the gauge. So our planting delays seem to be mounting up. And I don't know whether the forecast sounds like that's going to be remedied this week or not.
Yeah, but at this point, even if it rains just every few days, it's just a big monkey wrench at this point, isn't it?
We have some sandy soil in the county, and believe it or not, even with all the rain we've been having, there were a couple guys putting beans in here Saturday evening. I would say for most soils, there's some ponding, plenty of mud, and very few would even consider getting into the field. So, yeah, these intermittent showers, they're really going to slow us down now.
Did you still have plenty to do anyway, just fertilizer, weed management, so much other field work that still needs to be done?
Quite often we'll get all the pre-plant anhydrous put down. We'll work the soil and wait for rain and make use of what we call a stale seed bed. We're right at that point now. We're going to be jumping into the field as soon as things dry out. A majority of our operation is either no-till or strip-till, so we have very little field preparation to do yet. So we're just waiting to get going again with the planter.
Wow. From last year and already this year, you guys have been inundated different forms of precip.
I've been at this business for 40 years, and it seems like we'll go through 3 to 5 years of wet springs, and then we'll go through, an equal amount of time of dry weather, and it all makes for average springs. But when you get these wet swings like what we're at here, the last few years, as you've mentioned, you get a little frustrated, but that's part of the business, and you learn to work with it.
Yeah. Marshall Newhouse in Boone County. You can find his and other Crop Watcher reports in each week's edition of Farm Week. Welcome back. Joining us in studio, regular conversation with Mark Gebhard, Executive Director of Governmental Affairs and Commodities at Illinois Farm Bureau. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well for our Monday morning, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what we're not going to talk about, but thankfully we have plenty of things. Yeah, we got plenty of issues to discuss. We'll start state because who knows how much There's still plenty to talk about from a state perspective with we have 3 weeks? We have 4 weeks now?
Yeah, about 3.5, 4 weeks left till the end of May. That's, of course, the end of the spring session. So we are in that stretch run now, as we like to say, as we enter the month of May. So the plate of the General Assembly is extremely full. Tremendous number of issues on there. A lot of issues that are of extreme importance to us that we're monitoring very closely, but obviously some of the bigger overarching issues are a state budget, looking at a capital plan, and if they can develop that to promote infrastructure. And then, of course, to do all of that, they're looking at some revenue generation approaches, I guess I would say, the legalization of recreational cannabis being one of those, sports gambling also being talked about. And then an issue that we certainly oppose, and that's the progressive tax that has been proposed by Governor Pritzker. And we have a call to action out now as that has passed the Senate and moves over to the House this week. We're asking our members to contact their House member and oppose and vote no on the progressive tax.
The number 888-200-3794. Got that memorized by now. What do you think, tomorrow, Wednesday? You think a vote will come pretty quickly in the House?
I think the soonest that we would probably see a vote would be Wednesday, maybe more likely Thursday, or towards the end of the week, but it could conceivably be voted Wednesday. So don't delay in contacting your House members.
Now, with the Senate version, there was the Amendment 1, and then there was another bill that set up the brackets. So does the House have to, can it come up with its own brackets? How does that work?
Well, of course, they could amend. That's true. They could make amendments to the bills. There were actually 4 pieces voted on around this whole progressive tax issue. The first thing, as you mentioned, is the joint resolution. That is what, in essence, moves this issue to the ballot in November of 2020, because this would be a constitutional amendment. So the voters will have to vote on that here in the state of Illinois. So this is a long-term issue. As we think about it, it's actually going to play out all the way until November of 2020. The second bill that you mentioned is kind of what we refer to as the implementation bill. That's the bill that would allow the General Assembly to set the brackets, both for individuals, corporate, et cetera. That was also passed out of the Senate. Then there were 2 other bills which are contingent upon this resolution passing and everything being put in place by the voters in November. And one of those bills actually would eliminate the estate tax for Illinois, an issue that we support. And the other one is Senator Menard's bill that would require the state to supply 97% funding levels for schools, and then if that were done, there would be a property tax freeze or cap put in place, and so you'd actually see property taxes affected. All 4 of those pieces of legislation did pass out of the House on varying votes. To your point, though, the Senate, or the House rather, could, if they choose, amend those. I doubt if they do, but again, I'm not 100% sure that they would not be amended.
And so there's differences in these because some of them are just straight bills, straight vote, straight majority vote. But the amendment, because the amendment is going to talk about a ballot issue and a constitutional change, that's a different kind of majority that's required.
Right, because it's a constitutional amendment, it has to have a supermajority, so that requires more votes, if you will, out of the chamber. But the majority leadership, the majority, I should say, that controls both chambers, does have those supermajorities in both chambers to do that.
All right. So the action request is still there. You can find the article at farmweeknow.com, and you can call your state representative 888-200-3794. Enter your zip code. That'll take you to their Springfield office and ask them to vote no on Amendment 1. So that's certainly pressing this week. And then you mentioned still need to get a budget done, which surely doesn't just fall into place that last week headed toward Memorial Day. So a lot of components with that, including states. Now, is the motor fuel tax, is that part of the budget, or are those 2 things separate, totally separate?
They're really separate. So a state budget is obviously the budget that will guide the state of Illinois for this next fiscal year. And as you indicate, that's not an easy piece of legislation to get done. So it does take some time. The budgeteers, as we affectionately refer to them, have been at work, and so that framework is being put in place. It's out there now. But as I mentioned earlier, a couple of key components to making all of this budget work are how do you generate some additional revenue. And so I would anticipate some votes coming up relatively soon on the legalization of recreational cannabis. I'm not real clear yet. I think there's still a lot more discussing and negotiating to be done when it comes to sports gambling. I don't think that maybe the votes are there like they are for the legalization on the cannabis side, but I think they're going to certainly look at sports gambling as another revenue generation source. So both of those things are kind of contingent upon how do you make a budget work as you go into the next fiscal year. The capital bill really plays out a little bit separate from that as a separate vote, and that, of course, would be the bill that would put the funding forward for infrastructure projects. One of the things being talked about a lot as a part of that package, as part of infrastructure, is increased broadband coverage here in the state of Illinois, and we've been involved in some discussions around that. As an organization, we certainly support better access to broadband for all of our members throughout the state in areas that do not have good coverage now. We know that needs to be addressed. At the same time, we have to take into account property rights and make sure that as you lay fiber optic cable or you hang lines or however you provide the ability for people to have better access, that our landowners are justly compensated if land is taken to do that, or at least notified that there's going to be a project go through their property and that sort of thing. And if there is damage to tile lines, those sorts of things, that they are repaired. So we're looking at it from two sides, and we've been involved pretty heavily in those discussions.
Mark Gebhardt's Illinois Farm Bureau with more to come on RFD today.
With this week's edition of Farm Week, the early word, here's DeLaw Schonke.
Persistent rain continues to worsen flooding throughout Illinois, prompting increased frustration among farmers. Learn more about the lack of planting progress and the long-term weather forecasts in the latest Farm Week. Illinois farmers can apply for a license to grow industrial hemp. This week's edition of Farm Week provides details about the online license application process and industrial hemp production rules. Farm Week, the #1 ag publication in Illinois, arriving soon in your mailbox.
No other farm weekly in Illinois has as many people on the ground in Illinois covering Illinois agriculture for you with the depth on key issues to help keep you profitable. And don't forget, you can get daily or even more frequent updates online anytime at farmweeknow.com.
RFD Radio Network's Rita Frazier connects rural routes for you. Rita delivers passion and reliable information to listeners on the RFD Radio Network. Her radio career spans close to 3 decades. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I grew up on a small farm. My job today allows me to connect with people from all walks of life and experience opportunity every day. I get to talk about what I love, farming.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Spring is here and things are buzzing. Farmers and pollinators are working together to help feed us. In fact, 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat exists because of bees, butterflies, birds, bats, and other insects. Pollinators are important to our food system and the ecosystem overall. That's why farmers and those in the agricultural industry are working together to protect pollinators through education, research, and conservation efforts. Visit ILAGformonarchs.org to join the buzz. That's ILAGformonarchs.org.
It can begin with an email, a phone call, a flyer in the mail, or perhaps a misleading website. Loan modification scams. They come in all shapes and sizes and under different names. Loan rescue firms, counseling services, mortgage consultants, sometimes posing as a legitimate mortgage company willing to help you modify your loan and get caught up with your payments. But beware, these are highly trained con artists looking to steal your home. They often know who you are, where you live, and because it's public record, know if you are on the brink of foreclosure. You're not alone, however. The National Crime Prevention Prevention Council and U.S. Department of Justice have partnered to help homeowners identify and steer clear of these scam artists.
McGruff the Crime Dog here. Protect your home and safeguard your finances. It only takes a little time to become informed. Start by finding a free legitimate housing counselor today.
Take the first step. Visit www.ncpc.org/mortgage fraud. That's ncpc.org/mortgage fraud. This message is from the National Crime Prevention Council and U.S. Department of Justice.
Welcome back to RFD. Today on a Monday, I'm DeLoss Yonke. Mark Gebhard's Executive Director of Governmental Affairs and Commodities at Illinois Farm Bureau. I'm curious, when you do have limited window of time here, one of the questions, even about legalization of marijuana, because there are a couple of components to that as well about the social, I can't remember, was it social justice or what the right term was that was thrown in there, and, just how that is going to work, and also the talk about what to do with people who have, previous incarcerations or whatever, the terms were in there. How do you agree on that sort of thing in a short period of time without losing sight of, we're trying to raise money here for the state, let's keep the main thing.
Well, those are great questions, and I think that's what has, if you will, kind of caused maybe the delay, if that's the right word, on a vote until we get into the final week or two here of session. Because those details, I know there are a lot of legislators that have asked details from law enforcement standpoint, from social justice side, from some of these issues that are still out here. And so it's not just a revenue generation thing where you say, okay, if we legalize it, the state should make X amount of money. There's also costs, obviously, associated with regulating the industry, which will be heavily regulated, especially on the grower side. The Department of Agriculture will play a key role in that because they will be the agency that will be, like they are with medicinal marijuana, responsible for the regulation and oversight of that industry from the growing standpoint. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of issues, a lot of I's to be dotted, and a lot of T's to be crossed as you go forward there.
Expungement was the word I was looking for. I don't use that word very often, so it wasn't necessarily on the tip of my tongue.
That's a $10 word.
It is. So, capital bill and motor fuel tax and budget and several others.
Right.
It's more often than not that we go past the end of May, but it would certainly be a good look, I would think, to get all this done by before June 1.
Well, it's certainly, I think the push, the intention is they will adjourn on time. I have not heard anyone really talk about an overtime session, and we hope that they don't. But I think the intent is certainly to get this done. Now, the question around the capital bill and really around the motor fuel tax issue, do you push to finish that by the end of session? I know many people would like to see that done. There have been some folks that have speculated that this debate, this discussion about what to do with the motor fuel tax could carry over and be carried into the fall veto session. And the reason for that is, if you think about it, a lot of the construction projects have already been bonded and kind of put in place for this summer. So I don't know if there's maybe as strong of a push to try and get it done. I know people would like to get it done sooner rather than later, but there is some discussion about maybe that carrying over to the end. But the motor fuel tax increase, whatever that amount is the key part to make the capital bill work. So that, again, is your funding source.
Okay, we have 3 minutes here. We need to talk about, federal issues for me. Begins and ends with the tweets, the weekend, and doubling down today. More tariffs against China as what could be 100 people in a delegation come, hopefully, to finalize trade talks. So I assume this is a negotiation piece, and hopefully we can get something done here.
Well, as you said, the big news over the weekend, you just said it, we've made tremendous progress with getting a deal finalized with the Chinese to address our trade issues there in this tariff situation. As of this weekend, the president indicated that he may double down again on the tariffs. So there, of course, is an immediate reaction to that, not only on the Chinese side, but I think our stock markets and everything else will show that pretty heavily today. So we're, again, keeping our fingers crossed, hoping, I'm sure this is to try and push, if you will, the negotiations to an end, to try and put the pressure on by indicating that if you don't get this deal finished, we're going to increase the tariffs. Let's just hope that does not backfire. We desperately need to get not only this Chinese deal done, but, of course, we've talked a lot about the ratification of the USMCA agreement. I will say I think that one's much further down the road, unfortunately, and at best case scenario, that might be before the August recess, if we're lucky this summer. But the immediate deal right now is to get this Chinese trade agreement done.
Nobody puts baby in a corner, but when you do something like this, President, you put yourself in a corner here, and you surely have a Chinese premier that doesn't want to appear as if he's been bullied either. So his gamesmanship is quite captivating, and the overnight markets, soybeans were down 15, corn was down a dozen, so a lot of anxiety here.
There is, and I think we're going to see that throughout the day today, unfortunately, with the markets, both on the grain and the stock side, and we'll see what happens, but you're right. I mean, we're really kind of putting it all in here and seeing what's going to happen, and we're pushing pretty hard. Let's hope we can find a finish here and that it's a positive one. We can get a deal done.
All right. Well, we went 14 minutes. We didn't talk about. We're not even going to bring it up.
Well, I'll just say, as a Cardinal fan, it was a tough weekend to loss. So let's just get it out there. The Cubs played some really good baseball. I'll give them credit. The Cardinals last night, frankly, were embarrassing. So we'll go from there.
They got 15, 16 more games. There'll be plenty of chances to make it up.
It's May 6th. So
it's May 6th.
We're still plenty early, right?
Exactly right. Mark Gebhardt's Illinois Farm Bureau. Stay tuned. We'll have more to come on RFD today.
More farm news and information ahead. Stay tuned for more RFD Today here on the Illinois Farm Bureau Radio Network.
Be it through headlines, microphones, or tweets, Mike Orso connects rural routes for you. Mike has been covering farm and food issues for more than 3 decades. Whether it's print, video, radio, or feeding your online appetite, Mike keeps you in the loop. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I keep our communities, state, and country in mind with everything I do. My job allows me to work toward this mission with farmers and other rural Illinoisans.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Attention corn farmers. Your corn checkoff dollars are working with the U.S. Meat Export Federation to grow red meat export volumes. Because when we're exporting beef, we're also exporting corn. The beef industry consumes 28% of all corn fed to livestock, plus additional corn in the form of DDGs, a co-product of ethanol production. Now that's what we call working an angle. Your checkoff is working corn from all angles. Because of the Illinois Corn Marketing Board, your profitability is our bottom line. A message from the Illinois Corn Checkoff.
What's the excitement about buying a brand new car when you pay full price for it? County Farm Bureau members have a reason to be excited. A Farm Bureau membership gives you 2 car purchase discounts. When members buy a new Ford vehicle, they receive $500 off their purchase. And with a purchase of a qualifying Lincoln vehicle, they receive $750 off. Everyone loves a good deal, and the money saved is worth the price of our annual membership. This is just one of our 300,000 plus discounts that are always changing to fit our members' needs. Not a Farm Bureau member? Visit Illinois Farm Bureau online and join today.
As you prepare for planting season, remember your neighbors. Whether you're an applicator, grower, or beekeeper, use FieldWatch to register your farm and monitor for sensitive sites around you. FieldWatch is a free, easy-to-use online mapping tool. Consulting FieldWatch is now a requirement for the over-the-top use dicamba products. Communicating with your neighbors will help you protect your farm and the environment. Don't wait. Go online to fieldwatch.com. Growing agriculture, we grow best together.
Does the warmer weather have you itching for a weekend getaway? Take your Illinois Farm Bureau membership savings with you.
Farm Bureau members can save up to 20% at choice hotels, including favorites like Comfort Suites, Sleep Inn, Quality Inn and Suites, with even more to choose from.
Call 800-258-2847 or visit the Choice Hotels website to search all the hotels at once and to make advance reservations.
Contact your local County Farm Bureau for your discount code number.
All Ag.
All Illinois.
All Now.
There are a lot of smartphone apps out there, but do they have what's important to us here in Illinois? The Farm Week Now app does, and it's always at your fingertips. All Ag, All Illinois, and 24/7 where and when you need it for free. Go to your app or Play Store on your smartphone, hit search, type in Farm Week Now, that's one word, and download it today. Brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau, where we're all about farm, family, and food. Stoller International is the premier Case IH dealership in central Illinois with convenient locations in Pontiac, Herscher, Monunk, Streator, and Ottawa. Come see the large selection of farm equipment and parts.
Hey, welcome back to RFD today. On a Monday, we get to talk to the Director of Agriculture for the state of Illinois, John Sullivan. John, we're talking on the 6th of May. We do see the sun, but I know your farmer friends around the state certainly wish that sun would last a few more days.
Well, of course, if we had a beautiful weekend, sun was shining, and it certainly helped dry things up a little bit. But what I'm more concerned about is the week ahead. The forecast is it's not for this sun to continue. As a matter of fact, there's a chance of rain about every day this week. So we're certainly concerned about this. I had a chance. I got a little corn planted early on a couple of weeks ago now. I had a chance to look at it over the weekend, and boy, I tell you what, I don't know. It's these cold, wet days is not what anybody needs right now, and so there's quite a bit of concern out there, as I'm sure your listeners are very much aware of.
Yeah, for sure. In the fields, in the flatlands, and, of course, over by the rivers. And we'll watch that as we go through the week for sure. While we wait and cross our fingers and send out good thoughts for the week, things did get rolling in Springfield. Some more news on hemp and potential hemp legislation for the state.
Yeah, we had a really good week last week. Governor Pritzker and I had a press conference. Well, it was a week ago this morning, and we announced that the hemp applications were live as of 9 a.m. a week ago Monday, and so we wanted to get that word out to the public, which I think I've spoken with you about before. When I came into the office here back in January, the legislation was passed last year, but really there had been some work done, but there was still a lot of work to do to make it where folks could plant hemp. And a lot of people were saying to me, we want to be able to plant in 2019. So working with a fantastic staff here at the department, they finished up the rulemaking process and got those all signed off, all the regulations signed off by the appropriate committees at the Capitol. And so a week ago Monday, we opened it up for applications, and the amount of interest, we knew there would be a lot, but I will say that we're pleasantly surprised by the numbers that we saw in our first week.
So there is some hope for Illinois, and then you also mentioned that the adult use issue.
Yeah, I mean, hope. It shows that there's farmers out there, and even the non-farming community are looking for alternative crops to grow here in Illinois, and certainly hemp is. I think a lot of people are hoping that that's the crop that can be profitable for the farming community. We had, as of this morning, 535 applications came in. A total of just over 9,000 acres that have been applied for. That's what the permits were for, which is very exciting. But I think even more exciting on those numbers is of those 535 applications, over 100 of those are from processors. So individuals that have applied for a permit to become a processor of hemp in the state of Illinois. And I've said all along, we pretty sure we can grow the crop. They did for many years ago, but they did it. So we knew we could grow the crop. I think the concern is what we're going to do with it after the fact, after we grow it. So to have over 100 processor applications filed for, that was to me really, really promising. I was really happy to see that. And then yes, over the weekend the governor and supporters of the adult use cannabis program rolled out some proposed legislation which would impact the Department of Ag. Under the proposed legislation, and of course that's all it is at this point, it would have to be voted on and passed, but the Department of Ag would be responsible for the licensing and the oversight of the cultivation centers Also, the craft growers, there's a craft grower provision, and then processing. So we would be responsible for overseeing the processing of the adult use cannabis, and then also the transportation of it. So from point A to point B, from the cultivation centers and or the processing centers to the actual dispensaries, we would be responsible for that. And then also the testing of the cannabis. So we would be responsible for the oversight of all the laboratories that would actually test the product to make sure it is what people say it is. So this is very similar to what we do right now, the Department of Ag does with the medical cannabis program, and so many of the same responsibilities.
So you feel at this point that you do have the staff to take on that new challenge?
Absolutely not. Just to be quite frank, no, we do not. So, but that being said, this the budget for next year, for next fiscal year, that the governor and our department has worked on, actually appropriates some additional dollars in if and when the adult use cannabis program were to happen. So we would definitely need to put on some more staff all across the board, legal staff, investigators, inspectors, people to oversee the different processing, cultivation, transportation. So no, we definitely do not. But I will say, with regard to the hemp program, we do feel comfortable that the staff that we have right now, because of the folks that are trained in with the medical cannabis program and the investigators that are out there, that we feel pretty strongly that we could handle that, at least under the present the present form.
Illinois Director of Agriculture John Sullivan off and running for another busy week in Springfield. The Department of Agriculture very much a part of the Flood Watch 2019 as they work with other state agencies. I've been talking, of course, with the Illinois Department of Transportation, the state police, and others as we all watch the rivers and the weather forecast. More on the River and Levee Watch 2019 coming up next. This is RFD Today.
Hi, this is Sabrina Hardy, RFD Business Manager. I want to thank you for listening to the RFD Radio Network, the #1 ag radio network in Illinois. Did you know RFD Radio Network's programming is being broadcast by Rita Frazier and DeLosh Yankee with a combined 50 years of broadcasting experience? Join us daily. If you have any questions, email me at chardy@ilfb.org.
From midnight snacks to holiday gatherings, food is a part of our culture that brings us together every day. To make sure we all have food on our tables, Illinois farmers are going beyond planting crops and raising animals. We're making sure the wildlife that helps our food grow has homes too. To learn more about conservation efforts, visit ilfarmersconserve.com. Preserving our water, protecting our land, providing our food.
This message brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau.
Let's check the markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLosh Yankee. Over the weekend and earlier today, the president's tweets about added tariffs toward China have certainly created some market nervousness ahead of a huge week of U.S.-China trade negotiations and hoping that a deal can get done. However, in the overnights, we were down a dozen for corn and 2 dozen for soybeans. Right now, we have July corn down 7 3/4, 363. December down 6, 381 3/4. July soybeans down 16 3/4, 825 1/2. November down 16 3/4, 847 1/2. And July wheat down 3 3/4, 434 1/4. And so far today, June hogs have been down to $3 limit, 89.75, with August cattle down 45 cents, 108.70. DeLosh Yankee, RFD Radio Network.
Back on RFD Today. I'm Rita Frazier, continuing to watch the river levels and the levee watch along the Illinois and Mississippi rivers. First crests come and gone and levees holding, but much concern as we go through the week ahead. First, an update from Pike-Scott County Farm Bureau Manager Blake Roderick.
Well, on the Mississippi River, the crest has passed through the county. It didn't get as high as anticipated, which was a sigh of relief for everybody. The only problem is we're going to start getting rain here through Thursday. If the rain stays where they're talking about, shouldn't be a major problem. Forecast decides to change and we get some heavy rains. It's going to get ugly again real fast. The big concern right now is the Illinois River, because it's creeping up quite rapidly. By Wednesday, it'll be a foot of its high. That's causing a big concern because it's going to stay a foot below that level for almost 4 or 5 days. And if we get any rains on top of that within the Illinois River Valley or the Sangamon River Valley, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the levees. And part of the problem is Missouri River, Mississippi River, and the Illinois River all come together about the same place, and the drain's not big enough, so we've got water backing up. In 1993, we saw that water backing up, and levees started failing, down around north of Grafton, and they just popped off one right after another until they got to Scott County. Hopefully we don't see that this year. The water seems to be coming down the river to us instead of backing up onto us. The other part, Rita, is the length that this water has been on these levees. We've had, starting back in October, we had high water. March, April, we had high water. And here now again in May, that just continues to put pressure on the levees on the Illinois and the Mississippi River, all up and down the length of those north of St. Louis.
So close watching the forecast, watching the levees up and down. Are folks asking for help when it comes to sandbagging this week?
They are. That's a continual ask. Folks are working on the Illinois River, Scott County District, and the Big Swan District, the Hillview District, which are all in Scott County. They're doing sandbagging, and the levees are on the Illinois River are dirt levees. They're sod levees. They're fairly strong. The big concern is overtopping. At the level they're predicting, we should be okay, but if it goes up any higher, then that's where you start getting into some big concern, and where the filling sandbags and such is going on the Mississippi River too. In the Snide District, I'm sure it's going on in the levee districts up and down the Mississippi, Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri for that matter.
Blake Roderick, Pike, Scott County. In Mercer County, the Bay Island Drainage District, we talked yesterday afternoon with Brian Mills in that county, and he also reported good news for now in that part of the state.
Very pleased at the prediction right now. We have crested on Thursday, and there's some unknowns about the rainfall coming here next week, but we've been getting really good information from the National Weather Service, and they give us a pretty good level of confidence that we will not exceed our previous crest, which is really good news.
Explain to us a little bit more about your Bay Island Drainage District.
Well, the district here has 26 miles of levee that we maintain. In there's about 24,000 acres that this levee protects. This time of year with a flood situation, it becomes an hour-to-hour situation. It's not that one person might get flooded and the other one not. It's not that you might get flooded a little bit, and the situation is it's all or nothing, and everybody's in it together. There's been really good cooperation among all of us here in the district. If it would breach or overtop this levee, then all of us here in the district would be under, 12 to 15 foot of water. And so we do a lot of patrolling on the levee several times a day with eyes on it to just make sure that it is not in danger of breaching. We have a lot of seep coming through the levee. That's normal, and as long as that water's coming through nice and clear, that's a natural thing in this environment. We're going to be watching not only the weather forecast and the rain forecast, but also the river forecast, and that will dictate where we take action and if we take action. Our flood action plan calls for taking different actions at different stages, and so right now we are pumping and patrolling and a little bit of praying.
Yes, this next week's forecast is not good for the amount of rain. They're forecasting a lot of rain, and it's unsaturated soils and rivers running about the fourth record high it's been. That's just a bad prediction for us, a bad set of circumstances that's really got us concerned right now.
You mentioned being in contact with your Army Corps of Engineers because you're part of the Snai Drainage District. Other drainage districts up and down the river do the same thing, but as you said, you really have to be a hydrologist to really make sense of everything involved, including the forecast.
That's correct, and they during flood time they do really open up their centers to they're open. It's good access to other drainage districts. Everybody that's been around floods before has usually a good working relationship with the Corps during flood time. They've always tried to help us out. So I think everybody knows what to do and who to talk to, and the information's there. But still, it changes daily. It's not an exact science. It rains a lot here and there, but to compile them all together and come up with a forecast of how high the river's going to go next time is tough. It really is. It's just not an exact science.
You mentioned to me last week, that you've lived with this levee. You've always lived in behind a levee your whole farming career. This is your life.
Everybody's ancestors settled somewhere. Sometimes things change over time, and the river flooding has definitely increased. How often the water gets high is just really changed in the last 100 years. And my ancestors decided to farm here, and of course you can't move a farm.
For sure. Now you mentioned you're all in as well, as everyone in that Snai district. Anything that, we talked about sandbagging, about helping, and maybe just staying in coordination with your county farm bureau. What would you like folks to know, about the next few days, if they can get in contact with you, or what should we know?
Well, right now, there have been some sandbagging efforts. At this point, it's been kind of in anticipation where we might need it later. But if we do get another big rain, which sounds like we probably are, it gets to that all-out crisis, then manpower is really helpful. And when trucks can deliver loads of sandbags somewhere, it really helps. And so most farm bureaus, particularly the ones up and down the river, will have a connection to what's needed, and they'll know where people can go help, and there'll be sandbagging operations probably, and even just the labor on the levees. I mean, we do try to do a lot with bulldozers now, but still, when we get right down to that real final crisis of what sometimes you'll have to get into very labor-intensive situations there right at the last. But so I guess county farm bureaus up and down in Illinois and the Mississippi River, both rivers are going to be having a pretty major event here coming up. They would know where help is needed as time goes on here.
All right, Rita Frazier talking with several folks about the issues with high water and plenty of rain opportunities in the forecast still this week. In some cases, just to be nuisances, and in other cases, wonder what kind of impact that will have on water levels in different parts of the state. Dale Dirkholz, senior analyst at AgriVisor, is in studio. He'll be up next. I wonder, what could we possibly have to talk about after the weekend and the morning's events so far? Boy, nervous market after the tariff tweets by the president. We'll conclude things in just a moment on RFD Today. Let's check livestock markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLawes Yonke. Certainly nervousness to start the day in hog contracts. The June contract has been limited down $3 so far, $89.75. The nervousness, which has also been tied to grain and soybean markets, as the president doubled down on tariff talks over the weekend and today, just ahead of a huge Chinese delegation, some say as many as 100 people, coming from China to the U.S. trying to finalize trade discussions, but plenty of nervousness has entered the market overnight and this morning as well. Illinois direct hog market Monday was $1 to $2 lower, $51 to $57 a hundredweight. Sow market was steady, lightweights $55 to $68, heavyweights $61 to $75. They had huge price gains on Thursday of last week. DeLawes Yonke, RFD Radio Network.
How do people benefit from raising livestock here in Illinois? Rich Giebert, Illinois farmer, president of the Illinois Farm Bureau.
Well, growing up on a livestock farm was always interesting, and I enjoy it more today than I did back then. But it did give me the opportunity to have a good work ethic, learn to get up in the morning. And you know, that was difficult during my senior days at high school and college days. I had a tendency not to go to bed at a respectable hour. But no, it was always enjoyable on the farm and getting up before daybreak and milking the cows and getting the chores done and then go about the rest of the day's business.
Illinois Farm Bureau, along with beef, corn, milk, pork, and soybean associations, make up the Livestock Development Group, supporting the Illinois livestock sector. For more information, check out illinoislivestock.org.
All right, we're back on RFD today on a Monday. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Plenty to talk about already today.
Hey. I think for today that particular music bed was wrong.
You think so?
Yeah.
It's just some computer hitting some random music bed. What would you prefer to hear on a day like that?
Today would be appropriate if we had a funeral dirge.
I was thinking about Gloom, Despair, and Agony on Me, the old hee-haw song. You remember that one?
Despair, and Agony.
Deep, Dark Depression, Excessive Misery. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Those were the first three bars of that one. The old Urkel said, Agrivisor, boy, we're nervous now. This market is nervous.
Who knows what to make of that tweet yesterday, especially coming when it did, after a trade team was in China last week and on Friday, some of the basic comments got out of it. Discussions were well and they made progress at this point. And this week we were scheduled to have a Chinese delegation coming to Washington with a lot of thought in here. This thing could be close to wrapping up. And then yesterday afternoon, we get this tweet from President Trump that said, as of Friday, trade deal not done, we're going to throw on a 25% tariffs on, I don't remember how many billions dollars worth of goods, and raise some tariffs from 10% to 25% on some others. And so everybody just went, have things really been going as well as what some people want to say they've been going? I've seen a lot of different comments. Early this morning, I got an email from a friend of mine that polled, I don't know how many people, 8 responses, and they were all over the place.
Yeah.
And these are people that do a lot of analytical work, and have insight and have a history of looking at these kinds of things. So who knows what to make of it. I guess at the end of the day, my own personal thought was, all right, his tweet is kind of like, okay, guys, get things wrapped up and done this week. We've been playing footsie long enough here. We need to get it done.
Once you put a card on the table, you can't take it back. So if you throw that out there saying Friday,
right,
better get something done before Friday.
It's an incentive for them the Chinese to get something done, I think. Although the other worry I have is that maybe some of the details haven't been going as well as we've been thinking. But combine that in, trade team is going to be in Washington this week. Their Vice Premier, Lee Hay, is not going to come right now until Thursday, and is only going to come for one day.
A lot of things on Twitter saying he didn't make his flight, or he didn't do this flight, he's coming later or something like that.
Well, yeah, it's I saw early this morning. He wasn't coming with the team. He was scheduled to come one day on Thursday, or that day could change, depending on things. But when I saw that and I got to thinking about it, I went, boy, you're going to come from China for one day. 2 words flashed in my mind.
Yeah.
Photo op.
Right. That seems reasonable. Why would you do all that just to be here one day if you didn't have to be there while all the stuff's getting done and just come in and shake hands and smile and all's well that ends well and away you go?
Mm-hmm.
That's an optimistic way of looking at things, but that seems pragmatic at the same time.
That's the only way I can explain away he's only going to come for one day. And he doesn't need to be here for the discussions going on this week because they can converse over the phone and everything. But that kind of told me, even though the markets had a pretty harsh reaction last night and they're still down heavily this morning, maybe there's a little bit more light at the end of this tunnel than we know. Either that or there is no light at all.
If that's the case.
But if that's the case, when you look at ag, corn and beans in particular, wheat, you look at the grains, what's negative? We've already been dealing with a cloud anyway. Yeah. What's negative? There's nothing new.
Well, you already have soybeans have lost 50 cents a bushel in the last 2 weeks combined.
Now the hog market, the pork industry's got potentially a lot to lose, as we evidenced this morning. Pork's down 300 points. That's probably the more vulnerable sector here at this particular moment when you look at it over the course of the next few months. But, corn and beans, we're already not doing anything with them. Wheat or corn, either one to any great degree, doing a little bit of corn and milo occasionally. Beans, we do have a drag because we've got, I don't remember the number right now. We do have a fair amount of beans on the books that haven't been shipped yet. And those could be canceled. So, there is some worry about that. But on the broader issue, we don't get an agreement with them. We got nothing to lose because we haven't been doing really much of any business anyway. So, who knows? So
the trade talk has certainly superseded in the weather talk. I assume that a lot of this 50 cents these last couple of weeks was also tied of, how much of these corn acres might go to soybeans. I mean, we're all talking acres at this point. We're not talking about trend yields or anything like that might come with late planting. These funds are just looking at acres numbers right now.
But if you think about it, and I was thinking about this over the weekend, you got a crop insurance guarantee on corn at $4. Now I have beans that are, getting down closer to 8, 2 to 1. What's my incentive to even plant beans if it gets too late? Basically, I start pushing a pencil, and some people said even late last week, we're starting to get into a situation here where you prevent plants of stuff you can't plant for corn and walk away. And that's one thing that people don't understand. Weather forecast over the weekend changed a little bit. Stayed cold, but got a little bit less wet, moved it south a little bit. But weekend forecast from National Weather Service I don't trust because they have no human input.
Well, we will talk, in fact, later this morning with folks at